Select how you want to listen to your playback, your speakers in other words. It's recommended that you listen back through a good pair of audio headphones. Then, in the microphone drop-down menu, you should see your mic, if you have it plugged in and turned on. If you don't see the mic you want to use, close Audacity and make sure your mic is plugged in, and then relaunch Audacity. In the top left are the player controls: record, stop, play, pause, skip to start, and skip to end. In the next set, be sure the iron bar is selected. The iron bar serves more or less as your cursor, or sometimes called playhead. During recording and playback, keep an eye on these meters. One is for input, the one with the microphone, and the other is for playback, the one with the speaker. Note the vertical bar over 0. Do not go past that bar or clipping will occur. That bar is at the 0.0 decibel mark. 0.0 decibels is the highest level for digital audio. Keep your audio levels to the left of that mark. If you need to stretch out the meters for a better view, you can. Now let's enter our personal settings. The slider for the playback and the microphone should be set about in the middle to begin. You can adjust them when doing a mic check before the actual recording. Underneath the sliders on this configuration are some drop-down menus. First, MME Multimedia Extensions is the default and offers compatibility with the most number of computers. Windows Direct Sound is more recent and offers potentially less latency, the time between when you speak and when it is recorded. If you're unsure of which one to select, do a test and see which one sounds better. If you can't hear a difference, then you have your answer. The Transcription Toolbar lets you replay a selection at a slower or faster speed as you listen for something particular. Leave it at its default of 1. Lastly on this row, you select whether you want to record in mono or stereo.
When you get UC2, that's just simply because it's in stereo and we've got 2 channels. And if we just do a recording now, we're getting a recording actually in stereo, and of course that makes it twice as big. Set the inputs to mono, and now if we do a recording, testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3, we've simply got one file, one channel. It cuts down the sound of the size of the sound file immediately by 50% by simply recording in mono.
In the bottom left window is a very important setting: project rate in Hertz HZ. The default should be 44/100. If it isn't, go to Edit, Preferences, select Quality in the left-hand menu, and then set the default sample rate to 44/100 Hz and the default sample format to 16-bit. Okay, we should be ready to record. Remember that being ready to record means that you have conducted a microphone check, your input levels are not too high or too low, your microphone is positioned correctly to avoid overpowering the mic with plosives or sibilants. Okay, with our settings in place, we should now be ready to record. The first thing we're going to do is to click on the big red record button and then wait for 3 seconds as we record the ambient noise in the room. Let's get started. This is a brief tutorial on the son of Citation Machine, sometimes called simply Citation Machine. Okay, Now that we have our selection recorded, about 30 seconds, let's go ahead and use the zoom out tool to bring it on down so that we can get the entire clip on our screen. And that looks pretty good. The second thing we're going to do is to take a look, really close look, by zooming in of this opening section here. And as you can see, there are little dots and squiggles and whatnot on it indicating the presence of noise. With that section highlighted, we go to Effect and Noise Removal. And the first thing we do is to get Noise Profile. Now that we have the noise profile, we select the entire clip. We can go Control A, or we can zoom out and use our playhead to select the whole thing. Once we have the entire clip selected, we go back to Effect, back to Noise Removal, and this time we're going to preview what it's going to sound like without the noise. This is a brief tutorial on the son of citation machine, sometimes called simply citation. Okay, sounds good. I definitely got a pop on the shun there that I'm going to have to take care of. But we will go ahead and take out the noise by clicking OK. Now, if we zoom back in, you'll see that the once line that had the little pops on it now no longer has anything on it, and that is indicating silence. So let's go ahead and cut that off. We're finished with it. We don't need it anymore. It served our purposes.
One thing you might want to do is actually import in some sounds that are already on your computer. File and import, and then import audio. Do I want to bring in a copy onto Audacity and therefore leave the copy that's actually on my computer, this one here, make a copy of these files before editing, which means that the original, which is obviously saved, which is somewhere on your computer, will not be touched. So I choose that. If you don't want this warning, simply click here and then it won't ask you in the future. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that first one out. Now I'm going to click here on the select tool and I'm going to select it, that area. And you can see now, if I was to click on the delete button, that would actually just delete that completely. Now of course that wasn't very accurate, and there may be slightly more accurate ways of doing it. Well, the most obvious one is to click here, and we'll try again now, is that we're going to actually come onto the screen, and now we can be a little bit more accurate with our selection, and in fact we can even be more accurate than that. If we wait until we get, I'm just moving my cursor so it's right on, I can just push it out a little bit. And I'm not holding down my mouse when I'm doing that. I'm just simply waiting. By moving the cursor near to the line, it will turn into a finger, and then I can make that a little bit more accurate. And now again, I'm just going to click the delete button, and it deletes that. The tools are really useful. Obviously, this is the one for selecting, but a lot of the time, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you click on the zoom, click to zoom in very tight to where you want to do your editing. And then you can select and cut. Click here, it will fit it right across the line to make as most use of the space as possible. One other little thing working with selections, if I click on here and I mark out an area and then I was to click the play button, it would just play that part. Whenever you select, if you want to deselect, just click outside. If you select an area and that's the area that you want to keep and you don't want to keep the rest, then you actually can just do the rest here by clicking on this one, which is trim audio. And you can undo your selection and anything that you've cut away, and then obviously it'll come back to how it was originally. Another little thing, if we just record another file, I've got two recordings now, and if I select, it will do that one, but if I move the playhead down, it will select those two. So you can also do that. And now if I was to click on the delete button, for example, it will cut from the whole selection on the two tracks. It's always a bit confusing when you do a second track, because you can hear the first track being played as you listen to that track recording. So I'm going to close that track down again. And what I'm going to do now is just mute this one. So if I click on that, that mutes that track. And now if I record a second track, testing 1 2 3 4, testing 1 2, I can't hear this track being played. So simply muting it will do that. We can actually move the tracks around. Grab this, and now I can suddenly start to just drag that around onto the screen. I can show you an effect that I really like. After a few seconds of the music, I want the speaking to come in. So I'm just going to click on here. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and today we're going to look on the Teacher Training Videos podcast, and I've just added that in. So it kind of comes in here and stops here. So obviously if I play that back now, the recording levels are more or less the same, and so the music, when the speaking comes in, it drowns out the speaking. One thing I can do now is something called auto duck. So to do this, I'm just going to click on the select all and double click on this two here. I'm going to leave this here. I'm not going to select this one, and now I'm going to go to effects and click on auto duck. Now what auto duck does is it reduces the sound of the music when the speaking starts.
Okay, the next thing we want to do is to apply normalization. Now, normalization simply means that you apply a constant amount of gain in order to bring up the peak to a target level. So you bring it up as high as you can. For example, this is a peak right here. Probably a mistake on my part. Let's see what that peak consists of. It's a good peak. In other words, it's not a goof, it's not a bad sound, it's a normal peak. And so we're going to bring the whole thing up to a target level. So let's select the whole clip. We go to Effect, we go to Normalize, and you notice that I have my normalization set at -2.0. If you want to get a little bit louder, you can go to -1.0. Taking it all the way to the max, the 0.0 is risky. So 1.0, 1.5 is about as high as I like to go. I like to keep it at about 2.0 and let the user provide more or less volume if he or she wishes. So with our target set at -2.0 decibels, let's preview the sound. This is a brief tutorial on the son of citation machine, sometimes called simply citation machine. I think that is plenty of volume, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Alright, now that normalization has been applied, the next thing we want to apply is equalization, or sometimes called EQ. If you go to Equalization, you see a panel here that is divided into three main parts. Over here on the left are the bass frequencies, in the middle are the midtones, and on the right are the trebles. Now what equalization does is basically boosts or reduces selected frequencies in order to get a really natural sounding voice. Now there are predefined curves that you can apply. Telephone, walkie-talkie, RIAA, recording industry, a bass boost, a bass cut, a treble boost, whatnot. I like the AM radio, and let's go ahead and preview AM radio, since this is more or less a podcast. This is a brief tutorial on the son of citation machine, sometimes called simply citation machine. Maybe a little bit muffled, but it definitely took out my problem with sibilance. If I wanted to add a little bit of sibilance back in, I could sneak up these treble sliders over here. See what that sounds like? This is a brief tutorial on the son of citation machine, sometimes called simply citation machine. Definitely got to get that shun out, a plosive. Okay, let's go ahead and click OK. Now we're going to highlight it again, and we're going to apply the compressor. Compressor, often called DRC or Dynamic Range Compressor. And what it does is it reduces loud sounds and it increases soft sounds. Let's go ahead and preview what we've got. This is the default compressor setting. Let's preview what we've got. This is a brief tutorial on the son of citation machine, sometimes called simply. Okay, let's go ahead and apply it. Now all we need to do is, now that we've compressed it, we're going to bring the gain back up a little bit by renormalizing it to our 2.0. We should see things increase a little bit. Yes, and they did indeed. We're going to put our playhead right on top of it, and we're going to come on out until we see it. And there it is right there. If I loop that, you're probably going to hear that plosive. Yeah, hear that plosive. And so what I can do, now that I've got that plosive isolated, let's see if we can bring it down a little bit more. See what that sounds like. Well, we might just have to live with that. I think we've done as well as we can there. So we'll isolate the breath and hit silence. Okay, we've got a good little clip there. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. We don't need it. Cut it off. Zoom out. So those are just some of the things that you can do with Audacity. Now to render it out, you go to File, Export. You want to export it as a wave. I'll bring this up so that you can see it. You want to save it as a wave file. WAV, 16-bit pulse control modulation. And so this is our 30-second clip.